You're listening to the Second Look Podcast, where we take a closer look at what we're learning each Sunday at Connection Church to help you grow in your walk with Christ. Here are your hosts, Pastor Joe Terreri and Pastor Dan DeRochers.
Welcome to The Second Look. My name is Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And we're here talking about lust. But first...
It's not funny.
Joe, why are you laughing? This is a serious topic.
Why did you lower your voice by an octave?
I don't know.
Okay.
Joe, I want to talk about the pharmaceutical industry.
Great. That seems easier than lust.
Because this weekend, Anna has an ear infection.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
It's taken us a grand total of 6-ish hours to get her to take one dose of amoxicillin.
She could be better. Yeah.
And I really think that it was rough. I really think that like amoxicillin, like the penicillin branding is like the peak of pharmaceutical branding. Because I mean, think about the ads that we see.
Yes.
For, Mounjaro. What is it?
I don't know.
Wegovy.
Yes, Mounjaro. Yes.
Ozempic.
Well, I know what that is, yeah. And Wegovy.
Like 6 out of 10 people are using Ozempic.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know what the sample size was.
This is not where I thought we'd start.
The sample size. All right. Joe.
Yes, Dan.
If I was going to invent a pill.
Yes.
To take away lust.
Oh.
You know what I would call it?
What?
Unlustables.
Wait, that sort of sounds like one of my favorite sandwiches, an Uncrustable.
Yes, that's the joke.
Oh, okay. All right.
This whole thing was a setup so I could lay down that punchline.
Unlustables.
Unlustables, yes.
I think people should have fast forwarded the beginning today.
Luis did. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
Luis did an excellent job.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Really good message. One of the things I loved, and I shared this with Luis, and I was driving with my daughter Olivia home. I was only at the first service yesterday. My son Joseph had his basketball banquet, and they won the state championship, by the way. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's something
awesome.
To be celebrated.
Yeah.
Your lack of commitment to the church not to be celebrated.
Well,
please continue.
I think people want me to be more committed to my family. I think. Anyway, so we were driving home from his basketball banquet, and it was just my daughter Olivia and I driving home, and Olivia's 14, and she goes, "Daddy, I really love the message today," which, is always a little bit hurtful because I didn't preach it, but my kids tend to like those messages the most. And she goes, "I really love the message today." I'm like, "Oh, really, Liv?" I'm like, "Why?" And she goes, "Well, Dad, I'm not struggling with lust." She goes, "But if I was, I'd know the way back." Wow. And I just was like, oh, that is one of the highest compliments a message could ever hear around a really difficult topic. Because, I shared this with you. I was sharing this with some of the guys in the office. When it comes to the 7 deadly sins, I think this is the one sin that I feel really has stood out to me in this way. If you have an anger problem, even myself, when I got up and I started talking about anger, I shared, there was a time in my life where I saw a therapist a few times because I was struggling with anger, and I'm like, I want to get this anger out of my life. And I shared that story. And, when I talked about pride, I said, hey, here's something I know we all struggle with. And then when we talk about greed, even, we can kind of say okay, I see greed. And then with sloth, it's like, okay, I'm not lazy, but maybe I see myself sometimes being spiritually lazy. And then gluttony. And it's like, yeah, sometimes I over desire things, but then there's lust. And I would say the biggest thing that has stuck out to me about this topic is it would be the hardest one for anyone to stand up and say, hey, I struggle with this. Yeah. And I think we just need to be very honest that in the culture in which we live, there are millions and millions of opportunities for lust every day because of the digital nature of our lives. And I think one of the things I would just want to kind of name on this podcast is this is the sin that probably has the most shame around it. And this is the sin that we're probably least likely to confess and raise our hand and say, yep, I deal with this. And I just want to encourage everybody, as we begin this conversation, one of the worst things that we can do is just say, hey, I'm going to stay in the dark.
So you talked about the times in which we live.
Yeah.
We can be tempted
Yeah.
to lust when we're not even looking for it.
Right. And one of the things that I was reflecting on is, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, if you wanted to view pornography, like 25 years ago, you literally had to do a few things. You either had to go on pay-per-view. I mean, I don't even know how that worked, but I've never bought anything on pay-per-view. You'd have to go to the gas station and buy a magazine of some kind, or you'd need to go to the video store and
back room.
Here's my point. You had to move your body to a different location in order to kind of look at things that are perverted. And now all you have to do is reach for your smartphone. And that is something that I think all of us now listen, when I say all of us, I don't think all of us are struggling with lust. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I am saying is all of us have just immediate access where we could lust in just it only takes a second. So that's one of the real challenges, I think, in the days in which we're living, is just the ubiquity of perverse images, for lack of a better term.
When those images come on commercials,
Yep.
and network television shows,
Yep.
and your Facebook feed,
Yep.
and Instagram, and wherever you might be,
Yeah.
they're everywhere. So can those images be avoided? And then what do we do if they can't?
Well, yes, I think the thing we always have to say is it's always possible to have victory in Christ, to walk in a way that is pure and holy. Yes, it's possible. Is it always 100% avoidable? I don't know. I do know some people, they no longer have a smartphone and they end up getting a light phone because they just don't want that kind of temptation in their life. I think that's now we're getting more into strategies, but I think that there's just, I do think we can win. I want to be so clear about that. But I also think we need to be aware. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not, whoever you are, you're like, I'm not dealing with lust on a personal level. But I would say if you're a parent, you need to understand that your kids, they have the same access you do, unless you do something about it. And they're far more curious than most of us are in adulthood.
You might have restraint.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Right.
Necessarily.
And so, we have to be honest that this is just a part of our life that we need to be proactive in. And one of the reasons I started by saying this is a sin that we don't actually want to confess is because there's so much shame around it. And if we continue to say there's so much shame around it, then the people around us are going to have a hard time bringing that into the light. And so we just need to say, this is a battle. I mean, there's a book, Dan, that Steve Arterburn wrote, 25 years ago called Every Man's Battle, where he just acknowledges plainly that the battle against sexual temptation, specifically with pornography, and lust is something every man needs to confront in his life at some point. And it doesn't mean every man is addicted. That's not at all what we're saying. What we are saying is you have to understand you're in a war. And you have to understand that there's decisions to make. And it doesn't matter if you're 15 or you're 55, or 75, there's decisions to make with what you're going to watch on Netflix, what you're going to watch on Prime, what shows you're going to watch on TV, what sites you're going to visit, what you're going to see when you're scrolling. And I just really feel strongly we need to get this out in the open and say, this is a normal part of life. It is sin. We do need to fight against it, but we need help. We need community, and we need to be known in all of our life in order to find victory. Not so people can say oh, that's no big deal. That's not at all what we're saying. But when we have community in our life and people actually know hey, I need some help living purely before God in this area, it actually allows us to walk in freedom. And now I'm starting to preach, but I heard someone say this recently. My buddy DJ is the pastor at Parkerford Church, and I was just on a spiritual retreat with a bunch of other pastors a few weeks ago, and DJ said something that was so good, Dan. He said, we need to learn to cut Satan's finger off. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? He said, Satan's main tactic is to accuse us. And he points his finger, and he says to us, I know you did that. And one of the ways that we cut off Satan's finger is when we say, yeah, I did do that. And you know who else knows I did that? Dan. And he still loves me. And he's forgiven me, and he prayed with me, and we brought that sin to Jesus. We confessed it. I'm accountable. And so now Satan can no longer accuse me and isolate me and get me in the, kind of paint me into a corner and beat me up because I'm just an awful person. So that's one of the ways that we really need to think through. Like, we need community around this issue.
So that's sort of the external part of it.
Yeah.
But lust is really in our heart.
Absolutely.
Right? So the reality is you don't need external, that external stuff. You can
That's really
lust when someone's in front of you fully clothed or when you're by yourself.
Well, I can't remember who it was, but one of the Desert Fathers, way early in church history, literally left the city and went and lived in the desert and lived in a very monastic life in order to escape the lust in his heart. Because he thought, if I go far away from everyone, I'm not going to deal with this. And what he discovered is the exact thing you're talking about.
It was still there.
That lust is not only in what we see, it's also in our imaginations and also can be nurtured and grown in our hearts.
So tell me about that sin in our hearts, because we know, we're both married.
Yep.
We know that sex outside of marriage, affairs, that kind of thing, clearly there's an action there that's wrong.
Correct, yes.
What part on the inside here is where sin begins?
That's such a good question. So here's what I don't think sin is. I don't think noticing someone is beautiful or nice looking means you've lusted after them. I think Luis did a really good job. It's when that craving in your heart.
When seeing becomes craving.
When seeing becomes craving, and it's almost like, now I'm imagining things with that person. Not only do I think they're beautiful, I want them. And I want them in ways that are absolutely inappropriate and sinful and possessive, and that is offensive to God, and it's actually dehumanizing to the other person. One of the real, lust is evil because it dehumanizes what God has created. And so even though we're talking about needing to community and to confess, we also need to know why it's wrong and why it actually is sin, is because it says to something that God has made, I want to use that without relationship, without covenant, without commitment. I want to use another human being for my own selfish pleasure. And even if that only, even if 99.99% of the times for people, it's only happening in their imaginations, that's still lust. And this is exactly what Jesus was getting at in Matthew 5, when it wasn't just adultery is the issue. It's lust in the heart. It's adultery doesn't begin when I'm with someone who's not my spouse. Physically, lust begins when I desire to have someone who's not my spouse in my imagination, and that's where that sin begins and actually is birthed in us.
Okay, I don't want to dig too deep in this particular vein, but I want to just bring it up now.
Are you saying keep my answer brief?
No, yes, okay. That was code.
Okay.
Okay, you mentioned without relationship, without covenant, and with someone who's not my spouse. What if you're pre-spouse?
Pre-spouse.
What if you're in the dating realm?
Yeah.
Can you help me navigate that?
Yeah, so if you're, I don't expect anyone to remember, but back in November, I preached about sex. And one thing that I wanted to make super clear in that message is that sexual desire is not sinful. So here's what's normal. It would be normal to be in a dating relationship and desire to have sexual desires towards the person you are dating. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons you're dating them. You think they're cute, right? So the key is it's wrong. It's not wrong at all to have attraction and, hey, I'm really looking forward to the day we get married, and I'm really looking forward to being with you. But I think Song of Solomon is really clear. Do not awaken love until it's time.
That's good.
And so we need to just, again, this is where community is really really helpful. That's why we don't believe in, hey, we should just have sex before we're married and live together just to see if we're compatible. Like, that's not at all the biblical vision of marriage and relationships. And so sexual desire is normal from God. It becomes lust when it's like, I want to use you for me, not here's what is holy and righteous. I want to give myself to you.
That's so good, Joe.
Heart, mind, and body. Yeah. And so that's really the difference. It's, do I want to serve you? And we could even just use this language in marriage. Do I want to serve, my spouse or my future spouse when that time comes? Do I want to serve them, or do I want to use them? And listen, the best marriages is where two people show up in the marriage and saying, hey, I want to serve you, and that includes in our sex life. And so it's not wrong if you're dating and you're, that you would desire the person you're dating in a sexual way. That doesn't mean you've lusted after them. It does become lust when you want to use them for your own pleasure.
I want to talk about the role of pride in lust.
Oh, okay.
In our world, in church world, there might even be people that are listening that have sort of been let down by pastors who have succumbed to the lust of the flesh and who have had affairs or have had, other outside illicit things that have happened. There's a lot of celebrity pastors that says this has happened, and they step down from ministry and then come back with a book deal.
Right.
But I feel like there's, and this is not just exclusively for pastors, but I feel like there's an element of pride when you feel like you're at the top of your game and you've got some power, where it goes beyond desiring it in your head and becomes something like, no, I can have that, and I can have my life, and I can maybe even have my family and my
ministry.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's gross. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but again, this is a community issue. Like, if you think you're something in ministry, like, you literally are destined for destruction. Like, if you think you've made it, if you think you've arrived, if you think you're the man, and I do think there's a lot of wonderful women in ministry, but let's be honest, it's almost always men. I mean, maybe even would you say exclusively men. And so I think there's a couple things to know. I think when pastors have power over people, like, here's what's actually happening. Many states are starting to pass clergy sexual abuse laws so that when a pastor has sex with a congregant, or there's some kind of sexual relationship there, they don't see it as mutual consent.
It's not a relationship,
right?
It's abuse.
They call it abuse because of the power dynamics in that relationship. And so I think when it comes to pride, it really is entitlement. Like, I'm entitled to this, and and ministry is filled with pressure and difficulty and all the things, but listen, no matter how hard life is, there is never a good reason to step out on your spouse and sleep with someone else. There is never a good reason to take advantage of someone. And so I want to say that's not most pastors. And I also think we need to be aware. Talk about pornography. There's failure porn.
That's a good point.
We sometimes in church world, we tend to obsess over the failures of our leaders. And I would just say, as a leader, that's weird. Like James says, those who teach will be judged more strictly. And those leaders have a lot of power to hurt the people they shepherd. And at the same time, we need to watch out that we think we're above, because, and what I'm saying is we need to guard against our own self-righteousness. And I even need to do this when I see other pastors fall. Like, well, how, and I am at a point in my life, Dan, just to be very transparent, when I see a pastor fall, I am never saying like, oh, that could never happen to me. I always think, God, please let that never be me.
Wow.
Because I think one of the things that is part of spiritual maturity is knowing your own heart. knowing what you're capable of if it wasn't for God's grace. And so the reason I think community is so important here is people in ministry need to be known. They need to have people who aren't very impressed with them, respect them, yes, but they need to have real friends who actually know who they are, who see them in their homes, who see them with their spouse, who see them with their kids, who can call them, like, because the idea that you're going to be in ministry for 40 years and never be an idiot is just like, I was actually just praying with a younger pastor yesterday who was just visiting our church, and like, we're not superhuman. We're regular human beings with all the common struggles of life that other people have. So what everybody needs in their life, and this is back to the lust conversation, including you and I, what we need is real friends. We need people who really know us, who hold us accountable, and who love us enough to say, hey man, I think you're in the danger zone right there. Or, hey, I noticed the way that when that certain woman comes around, you start acting differently. You start being flirtatious. And I think all of us need eyes and ears to just kind of say, hey, I'm not saying anything's in your heart. This is just what I noticed. Yeah. And so we want to bring people closer to us the more power we have, and and people that we can't fire, honestly. Yep. Like people that, like people that don't need something from us. And listen, I don't think that's just for pastors. I think all of us need that. We all need community.
Joe, and if none of those things work, just take an unlustable.
Yeah.
But only one. Because if you take two, that's gluttony.
Yeah.
So you have to be real careful.
It's a really good joke, Dan. What about the Ozempic part?
You ruined it.
No.
You ruined the... If you take two, it's gluttony, and then you'll need Ozempic.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of The Second Look. You can catch this sermon and much more at our website, cometoconnect.com. Have a great week.